Hi, I am Mrs. Idy, and I am representing the first grade math team. And so I'm going to talk just a minute about what is coming up for your first grader in math, science, and social studies. Our next unit in math involves word problems, where students will be expected to hear a word problem and have to understand, do I need to add or subtract in order to solve? And you're going to use numbers up to 20. And so we've listed a few different kinds of word problems here that you can read through. And it's where students are going to be able to have to find any missing part of the number sentence, not just the sum or the difference. And so that can be particularly challenging for students simply because they just don't have exposure to that. So, an example of that is instead of just saying, I've got 10 cookies and my mom gave me five more. Well, how many cookies do I have now? It would be something like, my mom gave me some cookies and my dad ate four of them. Well, now I have eight of them left. So, how many did my mom give me to begin with? And so that's just thinking about it, but in a different way. And just having some practice at home and at school would be beneficial for your child. And students are also going to have to be able to create their own word problem. So I may give um, students the number sentence 8 plus 12, and they would have to be able to create a story situation in order to match that and then solve for the answer. Another unit that we'll be doing after that is place value up to 99. And so students in unit 4 did work on place value, but it was with numbers up to 20. And so it essentially is the same thing, it's just with higher numbers. So this can be challenging for students that are not fluent with counting numbers up to 99. So we'll still be representing them with concrete blocks, like place value blocks. We'll be representing them in a pictorial representation where kids will be drawing the blocks. Kids will be using a place value chart, and kids will be representing it with expanded form. They'll also be ordering and comparing numbers up to 99. And so just having your child become really fluent, and when you see these two-digit numbers, just point them out and say, okay, well, how many tens are in that number, or how many ones are in that number, and seeing if they're able to answer that for you. After that, we're going to be working on a unit that involves skip counting. So you may throw out your Halloween candy and say, okay, hey, can we count this by fives? Or let's try and count it by tens, and seeing how much easier that will be, and being able to start at any number when you skip count. So typically, if I say, oh, let's skip count by twos, or let's skip count by fives, kids are pretty successful, 5, 10, 15, 20. But if you say, let's start skip counting at 30 and we'll count by fives, and just being able to start anywhere on the hundreds chart and practice with that would be beneficial. We'll also be working on counting forwards and backwards, starting with any number up to 100 by ones and tens. And so that may mean something like, okay, let's start at 70 and let's count backwards. Or let's start at 90 and let's count forwards, and seeing how successful they are. And we'll also be working on counting 10 more and counting 10 less than a number. So if I may say 69, can you tell me what 10 less is that? Them saying 59. Or you may say, hey, I've got $37 and dad is going to give me 10 more dollars. Well, how much more money would I have then? So some things that you could do at home. It doesn't have to be a sit down for half an hour and you guys study from a book. It really just needs to be conversations that you have in everyday life. Kids understanding that math can happen anywhere. It doesn't just have to happen in our classroom. So you could be at Chick-fil-A, or you could be at Brookshire's, and you are putting items in your basket and you had to put some back. Okay, well, now how many are left in your basket? Or maybe you gave the cashier $20 and the food only cost 15. Well, how much money are you going to get back? Or maybe you're baking and you had a dozen eggs and you needed 3 for your recipe. Well, how many eggs do you have left to use? And so just pointing out situations like that and having kids be able to tell you, oh, well, we're going to add to solve that, or we're going to subtract, and just letting them know that you use math all the time as an adult. And you could be sitting in the drive through in your car, or while you're waiting in line for Shipley's Donuts, but just practice counting with your child. So you may say, hey, let's have a competition. We're going to start at 100 and we're going to count backwards. Or maybe say, hey, let's see, we're going to skip count by fives all the way to 100 and see how successful they are. So just make it a game and just really point out opportunities where you're using math with them. In science, we're going to be talking about how magnets can push and pull objects and how objects move in different ways depending upon their speed and direction. We'll also be describing and comparing different types of soil and the physical properties of natural sources of water, like streams, lakes, rivers, and oceans. And we'll also be talking about how rock, soil, and water can be used to make different products in our homes. In social studies, we're going to continue talking about being a good citizen and what that means and how we can be a good citizen. And we'll also be introducing maps and globes and talking about cardinal directions of north, south, east, and west. And we'll also talk about how places will have unique physical and human geographic features, such as different landforms and bodies of water. And we'll also talk about how different places have different types of weather. So that's what's coming up in the next few units for us. And if you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us and we will be happy to answer anything for you. Thanks so much.
Okay, so this is just going to be a quick kind of overview of what we've done so far in our first grade reading time and what we're working towards your child being able to do. So first off, concepts we've been working on are communicating effectively with peers. That means active listening, asking appropriate questions, speaking in the correct volume, and comprehension. So that means when they hear a story, they're able to retell the important events. When they hear someone speaking, they're able to tell you what they heard that person telling them. They're able to make connections within the text about themselves and about the world around them. They're able to tell you if the author wrote the story to be funny and entertain you, to teach you something, to convince you of something. They're able to use the text, print, and pictures to gather more information. So if there's a label, they're able to tell you why that label is there. If there's speech bubbles, they're able to tell you what the point of that speech bubble is, why that helps them comprehend and know what's going on in the story. So those are just things you want to make sure that as of right now, your child can do well, since the goal is for them to have some sort of proficiency in those kind of skills. As far as our phonological awareness, that means basically knowing the sounds that letters make and putting them together to form words. That's primarily taught through our foundations time. So your students should be able to rhyme, come up with rhyming words, silly words like nonsense words, like Dr. Seuss books, or actual words. So if you give them the word cat, they should be able to tell you lots of words that rhyme with cat, or dog, log, fog, bog, things like that. Alliteration, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, knowing that that's the first sound the same in most of the words. Decoding words, so that means they can look at the word at, say each sound separately, and then blend it together. That's really a big focus. In foundations, we talk a lot about tapping. So using our fingers to tap once for each sound, and then rolling our thumb across our fingers to blend the sound together. In our writing process, we've been planning and brainstorming, using pictures, and then using those pictures to help us come up with our beginning, middle, end of a story, sharing our story. We've been focusing a lot on author's purpose, so that students know as they get older that authors don't just write to write. There is a point to their writing, and hopefully they can apply that when they are authors themselves. And of course, working on the parts of speech, syntax, capitalization, punctuation, just typical things that you want them to be able to write sentences well, legibly, following appropriate conventions. As far as where we're headed, we're still hitting that phonological awareness really hard, making sure that if I give them the word hat and I tell them change hat to bat, they know to take away the H and put a B and make hat say bat. That's the adding and removing, changing and manipulating the phonemes. Phoneme is just a fancy word for a sound, a letter sound. And then alliteration, we're still hitting that because that's hard for these littles. Segmenting and blending syllables, manipulating phonemes, those are just those similar concepts, because research shows that if students can do that easily, then they're going to be able to read more effectively. And then comprehension, we're just now starting visualizing and creating mental images from text, because eventually they won't have picture books to read. Just think right now as an adult, when's the last time you read a picture book? Other than with your child, probably not that recently. And so we want students to be able to start making mental images in their heads while reading text, because that's what they do as an adult reader. We want them to be able to use evidence from the text to show their understanding. They're going to need to use that a lot as they get older. Even at the elementary and well into high school, they're going to need to be able to look through that text and say, here's evidence supporting my claim, or here's evidence the author did this, or that this happened in the story. So if you're asking a comprehension question when you're reading at home and they say, oh, the girl likes her dog, how do you know? What in the picture tells you how the girl likes the dog? What in the text tells you that the little girl likes the dog? Well, it says the little girl likes to play with her dog. So make sure your child can actually point those things out. As far as writing, we're still working in the same type of thing with planning, drafting, revising, and editing. Revising is changing things, and editing is adding in or taking out. So that's the difference between those. Those kind of get confused. Those are very hard for them. So we're just slowly working on building their stamina with that and comfortability with writing. How can you help at home? It's a very common question for foundations. We're sending those unit packets home every time we start a new foundations unit. Now, even though it says in the packet that that's homework, it's not homework for a grade, but it's just there if you want to work on those skills with your child as extra support. I highly suggest just doing a little bit of it to see if your child can do those things. And if they can't, then you know you really want to hit that hard at home. And comprehension, if you look to the right, there is a little reading with your child before and during. Those are just good questions to ask your child as they're reading to really help boost that comprehension. Because what we found is even if they are rock star readers reading high level text, they're really struggling to comprehend it. We don't just want fluency, we want them to tell us what they're reading. And then writing, we've been working on handwriting every single day in our class, and it's a really big point for you to be working on at home, because if they can't read what they wrote, then they're not going to be able to make an understanding of their story. They're not going to be able to share what they wrote during our writer's workshop time with the class, because it's going to be illegible to them when they try to read it, and to their teachers. So just keep working on that skill with them, making sure they have those fine motor skills, giving them chances to write at home, so that way they are constantly practicing. Because as we ramp up more and more, it's going to be quicker and quicker paced as far as how much time we can spend teaching them how to form those letters. We're hoping that they already know how to form all of those letters. And of course, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us. This is a year-long process. This is a journey, and the best way for your child to be successful is for them to have support here at school and at home, and for us to be on the same page. Because above all, like that quote says, we want to help your child develop a passion for learning so that they will never cease to grow, so that all their life they can be a lifelong learner and reader. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out. And thank you so much for coming to this Grit and Mindfulness Night. And we look forward to seeing how well your child does this year. Thank you.